Amazingly, one is no longer just a breath, we can all have but before you commit, let's go over your professional.
I went home with a waitress, the way I always do. How was I to know she was with the Russians too?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark DiCarlo. Tonight, my guest is Judge David V. Stith. What's the V stand for, David?
Vincent.
David Vincent Stith, and you were just appointed to be the judge in County Court at Law number 3 as a Republican. Is that right?
That's right.
So how does that happen? Do you know Governor Perry? Are you big in the Republican Party and you've given a bunch of money? Do you do applications? How's that work?
Well, this appointment wasn't by the governor, and no, I don't know Governor Perry. I've met him a couple times.
Okay, it wasn't by the government.
It was by the commissioners. It was a commissioner's appointment. I had applied before when there was an opening for the 148th. I'm sorry, the 347th. Judge Missy Maderi. That appointment was done by the governor because that was a district court. So this is a county court, so the commissioner's court did the appointment.
I see that. That's interesting. So you apply through them. You fill out an application. And how many, did you have to be a Republican to get that position, or how's that work? Is it a political position?
You know, it's not supposed to be a political position. I know there were probably 10 or 11 people that applied for it.
I see.
And I'll tell you, for me personally, when I went in to talk to the commissioners, I didn't talk to just the Republican commissioners. I talked to all the commissioners and County Judge Lloyd Neal, and I said, you need to appoint the person who's best qualified without regard to politics. This is a judicial opinion, or I'm sorry, it's a judicial position. So it was important for me that it be, at least on my side, for it not to be political.
Okay, so you took this position because the former judge, that was Judge Martinez, correct?
Yes.
Resigned, right?
Yep.
So he resigned, and how much longer is left in your seat right now?
1 year up until November, and then I'll run for election.
Okay, and I think you already have some political opponents. Is that correct?
I do.
And they're going to be running as Democrats. You're going to be running as a Republican.
That's right.
Now, I'm correct in stating you've also run for judge before, right?
I have. I ran for the 148th, lost in the primary to Guy Williams.
Okay, and so what's your opinion? I always ask the judicial candidates this and judges this. What's your opinion of the way the election process works? Do you think you've got to raise too much money? Do you think it pretty much works as it's intended to work? What do you think, as an insider?
Of course, I like the election process. I think it's good that the citizens get a chance to vote. I don't like that it's become a lot about money, probably too much about money, and I don't like that a lot of that money comes from big law firms. And I don't know any way to change that. You know, if you're asking me if I had, you know, the magic wand to change it, I'd make them nonpartisan, and I'd do a lot of limiting on the amount of money that can be given by any one firm.
Okay, so it's not limited by any one firm.
It is. It's 15,000, but 15,000 is a
15,000 is a good amount of money.
Good amount of money.
Because what do you feel to successfully mount a campaign, say in the district court? In your experience, what kind of figure were we looking at? 50,000, 100,000?
150,000.
100, 150,000. And what does, say, the job as County Court at Law number 3 judge, what does it pay?
140,000, 139,000.
139,000 plus any kind of fringes, I assume.
I'm just a month into it. I don't know of any fringes. There may be some. There may be retirement.
A month into it. So how long have you been a lawyer?
13 years.
13 years. Oh, okay. So, and I think of you as a new guy. What's that say about me, right? 13 years. Where'd you go to law school?
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. That's in Lubbock, right?
Yep.
You know, I thought of going to Texas Tech because I thought on that whole part of Texas, it's the only law school, right?
It is.
And I thought to myself, I said, it's got to be a good market if you stay out there, but I don't know if it's true or not.
You know, I love Lubbock. I thought it was a great place to go. It's a fairly small town. I mean, there's a lot of great lawyers out there that I've heard about. I don't know. I never had any desire to stay there.
I've never been there, but it's kind of one of the desert towns. It's like a desert town, right? Pretty rough terrain. Big ranchers, I assume.
Oh yeah,
right?
Wind blows from one side, and all of a sudden you got a dust storm in your dorm room.
Yeah,
so.
that could be. Did they have any water over there in Lubbock? Do you have any lakes?
Not that I found.
No, nothing like that, huh? And where'd you go to undergraduate school?
University of North Texas.
University of North Texas. That's in Denton, Texas. What'd you major in undergrad?
Psychology.
That's an interesting major.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, that's an interesting major. Unfortunately, it's pretty hard to market it unless you go to law school or you get...
That was the problem.
Right.
That was the
unless
problem.
you go to law school or unless you get a master's or PhD,
exactly.
right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
It's interesting. I think whenever one of the good things about a major like that is I do think it's of some use because of the way the law is in the practice of the law. I do think that you do learn some things that you can
I agree,
apply.
and there are mental health issues in the court system, and there's, well, as you know, practicing, there's big problem areas when a person with mental illness comes into the court system. The courts are, I don't know, it's difficult for the courts to handle a lot of those cases.
You know, I'm going to say this, in my opinion, from what I've read and my personal experience, is it's kind of ignored that perhaps, and I would almost argue that maybe 3/4 of the people accused of crimes have mental health issues.
There's a lot. I can't say 3/4. I can tell you there would be certainly a percentage, if not a fairly good percentage of the people that I would represent that had mental health issues.
I know when I say that, obviously that's just based on my personal experience. And I've had a large Social Security disability practice for many years, and I have, I think, a pretty high level of expertise in that area. So when I'm saying that, I guess I'm also implying much of it's not diagnosed.
I understand.
And that's, obviously just my opinion. I would state that probably a certain statistical amount of the people that go in before crimes have been treated by MHMR. I would imagine it's fairly, that would probably be 10%.
Oh, at least 10%.
At least 10% have actually been treated at MHMR. So what are we supposed to do about, this is a philosophical question, and if I know that you're in charge of applying the law, and going outside of the law and policy could be difficult, but do you have any thoughts on that, or is that important for a judge to consider? Maybe it won't come up half the time. I guess 90% of the criminal cases are plea bargains anyway, correct?
90% are, but I think as judges, I think we have a duty to identify those cases, and I think that as public servants, we have a duty to, if we need to, think outside of the box to resolve some of those issues. And let me give you an example. Let's say you handle it the traditional way for a misdemeanor. Somebody has a mental illness and needs to be evaluated for competency. If you send them down the normal path to try to restore competency, that can be up to a year. There have been cases of people with mental illness sitting in jail for a year waiting to see if they can go off to a state hospital. Can you think of how much money that costs the county, when in reality that case should have been handled in another way so the person isn't sitting in jail for a year and getting help? On a criminal trespass. Even a criminal trespass can land them there.
That's assuming you handle it that way.
Assuming you handle it that way, exactly.
And what you're, I guess, inferring that may not be the best way to handle it.
I don't think it is. And I can tell you, I just was at a meeting where the Nueces County Jail program, and I don't know who's in charge of it, received a grant to try to divert some of those cases. So I know there's a process in the works. I've talked to some people in the jail about it and told them my court's open to trying to figure out how we can help with that.
I see. Well, talking as a Republican, oftentimes the conservative platform is that, well, the social welfare programs don't work that successfully anyway. And you can correct me if you disagree or if I'm mischaracterizing the right-wing platform at all, or the Republican platform. They don't work anyway, so, these people have to take responsibility for themselves. Let's just get them, sentence them, and
first off, I can tell you this: even though I'm running as a Republican, which is what I am, I'm conservative. When I take the bench, I don't just represent conservatives. I don't just view things in a conservative light. When you're a public official, a public servant, you represent all of the county that's there. And I can tell you, just on a personal note, after having said that, I would think that the conservative thought toward that issue would be, how do we make a program that effectively keeps the community safe, restores competency, and costs the least amount of money to taxpayers? I think that would be the smart approach, rather than just saying, well, a person is mentally ill and has committed criminal trespass, and we're going to keep them in jail for a year. I can't imagine that would be the smarter, the right thing to do.
Have you had a jury trial yet in your court?
Not yet. First docket call was on Thursday. We're going to start on Tuesday, which is interesting you mentioned that. I have some changes, some ideas to change on the jury, the way juries are picked. So I'm going to see if that works.
What are your ideas?
I can tell you, and as you know, if you've practiced in the courts, my personal view is that jurors, the jury panel, when they come in on Monday, are sitting way too long waiting for...
The jury panel, that's the large group of people that go to that first floor and sit in this huge room, which most of us have sat in perhaps at one time or another. And move up your microphone while I'm talking.
Okay.
That way we're not so boring here. I'm just kidding. So this is the large group of maybe, how many people is it? Is it 200?
Oh, at least 800.
Oh, is it 800 people?
Probably 6 to 800.
Okay,
yeah.
6 to 800
yeah.
people in this huge room. So you were saying that they wait too long in that large room.
Well, and part of the problem is all the cases that were called for docket call, the attorneys are ordered to show up on Monday. So an attorney might be set in 5 different places. So you might have an attorney that's not going to get to, at least my court, County Court 3, till 10. And so the jurors have been ordered there to be there at 8:30. So I've changed that. The way that it's for the first round, the jurors are going to be seated for County Court 3 and released that morning. The attorneys and their clients have to show up Monday. So we're going to find out what case is going to be resolved, what case is going to go, and the jurors are not going to be sitting around waiting for that. If the case actually gets picked, if none of the cases...
Okay, so the jurors waiting for... I'm sorry, just to clarify, Judge. The jurors who are waiting to hear a case in your courtroom from this large panel, you're going to release them because they're going to be sitting there waiting.
That's right.
A large part of the day because by the time the attorneys get there, or maybe witnesses, etc.
That's right. They're going to be released. They'll call in that day. If all the cases have resolved, they want them to show back up. If there's a case that's actually set and going to trial, the jury will show up at 9. The parties will show up at 8:30. Jury will come directly up to Court 3, and we'll get started. There won't be any waiting involved.
Okay. So, what other problems have you seen in courts that you think that, gee, I could do a better job than this? There could be various things that,
Sure.
there could be various things that could be. I remembered years ago, everybody had docket call. When was it on? Was it on Monday morning? In all the courts, 8:30. And obviously we couldn't all be in the same court at that same time. And then now it's staggered more. So that was one problem that's been alleviated. Do you see any other problems that you would personally see, you'd like to see solved?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say the word problem, but I'm not going to turn it as that. There are.
It's not a problem or whatever, an issue that you think could be handled better, whatever.
I can tell you a big issue, another issue that I'm working to resolve with Judge Klager is when a person is sentenced to either jail time or this program called SPURS. If they mess up on SPURS, then they have to do jail time. The problem is that the defendants are then ordered to sit out their fines and court costs. So they may have, let's say, $1,500 that they owe the county for fines and court costs. Instead of actually having to pay that, they're sitting out that time in jail. Now, we credit them, the courts, credit them $67 a day, but yet it costs the county $15 to $30 a day to house them. Why are we doing that? The person can serve their time in jail, they can get out, and they can pay their fines and court costs. So that's one issue that I'm working on addressing.
Okay, so I guess I'm a little bit lost.
Sure.
Okay, so SPURS is when you serve your time on the weekend in jail on a work program, right?
That's right.
All right, so that's what SPURS is. So let's assume that somebody gets 30 days SPURS plus court costs and fines.
Okay.
I guess they can, in fact, instead of paying those court costs and fines, they could do it by this weekend work program called SPURS, right?
Right. And that's okay. There's no problem with that.
There's no problem with that. But then you're stating that some of the people shouldn't be sitting in jail serving it out when they could be working because it costs more money to house them than the...
I'll clarify that part. And we'll break it down for the two issues. Let's say a person takes SPURS out of it for a second. Let's say a person is sentenced to 30 days jail, along with fines and court costs. $200 fine, $400 court costs. That person is going to serve the 30 days in jail. Then the jail's not going to release them. The jail's going to hold them so that they can sit out the $200 in fines and the $400 in court costs. And so the courts basically are going to credit that person $67 a day. And I can't tell you if that's the exact figure. I think it is. $67 a day for every day they stay beyond their original sentence. Why are we doing that? Why would the county want to pay to house somebody to pay ourselves back? That just makes no sense to me.
Okay. So you'd rather have them released to see if they... What if they don't pay the money? Then what are you going to do? Then you're going to pick them back up? Can you do that?
Yes, you can. You can pick them back up. And I can tell you, I looked into it, what the percentage of people who paid their fines and court costs, and it was hovering at about 60 to 70% the last time I checked. That is pretty good collection. I know it doesn't sound maybe great, but that's a lot better than just crediting them $67 a day and never seeing any money.
I see. So before you became judge, did you practice primarily criminal law?
Since 2005, I became board certified criminal law, and so I focused primarily on that. I would take a civil case here and there, a divorce case here and there if my clients needed me to do it.
So in a county court, like let's say county court number 3, what is most of the time taken up? Is most of the time taken up in civil matters or criminal matters? And civil means basically lawsuits, and I guess family law is included as a civil matter.
It is, but we don't handle family law.
You handle lawsuits and you handle criminal law cases. Have you tried any civil cases yet?
No, I've had quite a few civil hearings. And I'll tell you, from my experience...
Pretty exciting, huh? I'm just joking.
Actually, it's not bad.
It's
usually good attorneys that...
Hey, does that answer this interrogatory number 7? I want a motion to compel the answer, right?
Oh, yes.
That's the deal of that.
Oh, yes. But I can tell you we have about 1,500, currently pending, 1,500 criminal cases, 500 civil cases. Quite a few of both of those will end up settling. But primarily the courts are going to spend a lot of time on the criminal cases, some time in the civil as far as the motions and summary judgments.
Okay. Let's talk about criminal cases just for a second.
Sure.
So you're a judge, and I'm trying a case in your court, right? And the prosecutor has this jury charge defining beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all doubt. And Mark DiCarlo, as the criminal defense attorney, says, Judge, I'm going to object to that. That's not the definition. Some of the judges allow it in, some of them don't. There was a time years ago where that was never in. Then the Court of Criminal Appeals, I believe, said, yes, you could put it in as a definition. Then they said, well, no. So where would you put it in that specific issue? Would you put it in the jury charge?
You can't. The law is clear on that. You cannot have a definition of reasonable doubt. You cannot have that in the jury charge. It's clear.
Good for you. Because I have had tried cases where it's been in despite my objection.
Not allowed to.
And that's, again, my opinion. Don't need to get anybody angry here. And then, okay, at the end of the trial, I'm looking for the exhibits. Where are the exhibits? Well, we gave them to the jury. Well, did the jury ask for them? No, but we gave them all to the jury. What do you think the proper procedure is at the end of a case? Should the jury get the exhibits unless they've asked for them? Should they be tendered?
They need to request them first.
They need to request them. And that's what I would agree with, too, for whatever my opinion is worth in a trial. So then, have you tried the big criminal case? And at the end of the criminal case, the judge goes into the jury chambers, shuts the door, talks to the jury, says, attorneys aren't allowed in here. And you don't know what's going on there for half an hour to an hour afterwards. Have you had that experience?
I have. Trying cases,
and what do you think about that?
I can tell you what my practice is going to be.
Yes,
I'm going to talk to the jury. I'm going to tell them they are able to talk to the parties if they want to.
Yes,
they don't have to talk to them if they don't want to. And I'm going to invite the attorneys in there, and I would like to talk with them as well. So we'll go in there together.
But I have seen that procedure fairly commonly, and it's kind of disconcerting to a criminal defense attorney not knowing what's going on in that jury room at that time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what do you have any idea what the rationale for that is?
I don't.
I thought perhaps it was politicking in there or something, or I don't know, but I thought it was inappropriate too. So how about in your DWI practice? Did you try many DWIs?
I tried a fair amount of DWIs.
And obviously, I'm sure you were trying cases as the law has changed. You probably remember when it's .10, correct?
I do.
And now it's .08, right?
Yep.
And then obviously now I had an interesting issue, and I don't know if this is something, again, that you could really give your policy on. Are you a little bit shocked that I shouldn't ask if you're shocked again because you're a judge, but the law is now that a police officer could order a blood test in certain instances, correct?
That's correct.
And I had an occasion to try a case, a felony DWI case, felony DWI habitual felony offender case, which is freaks you right out, that kind of time on a misdemeanor. Somebody gets a misdemeanor DWI, and because of prior felonies, they're looking at 25 years minimum. And the judge that tried that said, he gave my client the least amount of time, but nonetheless, it's rather disconcerting. Obviously, you wouldn't be a part of that. So now the police officers can, in fact, order sometimes blood tests.
They can, and they have to. And again, I just want to be careful. I'm not going to comment on any pending case. You know how the issues we have with judges, but I can certainly talk about the law. And from what I've seen, certainly as a criminal practitioner, is a lot of times what they're doing is they're having magistrates on standby, and they're getting warrants for blood draws. So
that's acceptable, supposedly.
And that's the biggest issue I've seen. I know there are some cases pending in various stages of appeal on that because there's a special statute authorizing blood draws when there's an accident involved and whatnot. And so I don't, I want to see how the cases come down. Certainly, when I want to give my opinion on that, I'm going to follow the laws.
Certainly. What about the now talking not in the books? Probable cause hearings for stops on DWIs. There's the way the law is supposed to work and the way the law works. And I mean, I'll tell you, some of the I think that you might have agreed when you were a practitioner. Probable cause meaning, let's say you're driving down the road. Theoretically, the officer is supposed to have a reason to stop you. Correct?
Correct.
And if he doesn't have a reason to stop you, then therefore you could suppress the arrest and the search. Correct?
Correct.
Did you file a lot of motions for probable cause when you were an attorney?
I did.
You did? Did you have success with many of them? Not too many?
30%.
30%. Well, that's pretty good. But so then you were, in fact, kind of just filing the better ones.
I was filing the better ones.
Yes. What do you think of that? Do you think that's something that you will consider within the range of the law, whether or not there's probable cause to stop the vehicle, etc.?
Certainly.
And that's done what? You do that by, let's say a lawyer wants to file a motion for a bad search on a vehicle or a stop. That's done by a motion, correct?
It is. Motion to suppress.
And a motion is filed, and then evidence is heard from, police officers, etc.?
Yeah, the state attorney will have the right to call whatever witnesses they want to present, whatever evidence they want in regards to the legality of the stop.
Okay. And did you ever try, when you were practicing, did you ever try any capital murder cases?
I did. I tried capital murder cases, none that carry the death penalty. I was working on the death penalty case when this appointment came up, and I had to resign from it, of course.
Oh, okay. So you were working on one. That's another thing where there's been some volatility in the law regarding the questions that are asked, whether or not these are the correct questions through the years. I noticed when I was looking at your resume, as running for judge, that you were a special prosecutor, which I thought was kind of an unusual position. There aren't many special prosecutor positions out there. How was it you were a prosecutor?
It is. It was a very interesting process, I can tell you. It's interesting in that usually if you're prosecuting, then you're not taking cases and defending. A special prosecutor comes into play where the elected district attorney is not able to handle a case for whatever reason. Either there's a conflict or they're in another county and they can't handle that case. So they're able to apply to the judge of the court and say, we'd like to make a motion for a special prosecutor, and they can recommend a person. So that was done in a number of cases where I took over and handled them.
That was was that in our county,
B County?
That was in B County.
It was.
So what was that experience like? You go, well, now here I'm defending this guy with drugs, and in this other county, prosecuting the guy.
It's difficult. It's difficult to switch hats. I did it not only because I wanted to experience that side of the law, because it was. I can tell you, I've had the desire to be a judge for a while, or at one point try to run for a judge for a while, and so I wanted to make sure I had practiced both sides of the law before I made that attempt, so I'd have that experience. And I can tell you, it was hard for a number of reasons. One, just the drive to Beeville every day is a long drive.
About an hour and a half, I think,
Yeah.
right, from Corpus here.
And second, it's difficult because it requires, when you're defending a person, your job is to zealously represent that client within the bounds of the law. And when you're prosecuting a person, it's to see that justice is done. So there's different standards when you're trying to do both of those jobs, and it's difficult to switch hats back and forth.
I will tell you that from my opinion, I have seen some prosecutors that never successfully, then when they became defense attorneys, never quite made the successful change. A lot of them have, but there have been quite a few that don't seem like their heart has never been in defending the accused after that. But that was you'd never worked for a DA's office. That was your
right.
Your
that was my introductory experience working for a DA's. Well, and I didn't work for. I got to be careful how I say that. I did not work for a DA's office. A special prosecutor is an independent prosecutor.
How were you paid on that job? Were you paid per hour, per case, per week? I'm just curious.
The
how they
same
work something
rate
like that.
as a court-appointed attorney. It's handled in the same way and the same rate as a court-appointed attorney by statute.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. B County is like one of a area of counties like San Patricio County and B County where they have the rotating judges, right? There's
That's
three
right.
rotating judges that go to 4 different counties, correct?
Correct.
I think they go to Aransas County. They go to, right?
San
So,
Patricio, Aransas,
County,
B, and George West, Live Oak.
there aren't any videotapes of you out there, are there, Judge? I couldn't help it.
No.
I just couldn't help it. I just couldn't help it. Any videotapes? How old your kids? No, I'm just teasing.
My wife is
I just
actually
can't
12
help
weeks
it.
pregnant
Well,
with our first child.
Oh,
so
well,
I'm very
okay.
excited.
So, that's, you don't have any videos out there, I hope.
That was a thinly veiled reference to the judge in Aransas County, I'm guessing.
But you know, so it had so many good lines, that tape. I'm going to beat you into submission. And, there were so many good lines there that...
I'll tell you, I didn't make it through watching it.
No?
I did not. I watched part of it and was just turned it off.
Well, I don't want to get into it because you're a judge now, et cetera. And I'd almost... It caused a lot of... I looked at it closely and we had a lot of discussions in my office. And I thought it was very interesting. And again, I'm an attorney. I was looking at both sides of it, and that's the way I saw it. It's kind of, I think... it's very interesting, and of course, it's tragic in a way on both sides. So, let's see here, and then what about the rest of the cases that you'll be handling? We didn't discuss. I know they handle a fair number of probate cases, correct?
Quite a few.
And have you ever done probate law?
Very little.
Yeah. I haven't. I'd always wanted. I never got started doing it in my practice, and I've never really done it. But I don't know about its complexity, etc. Are there contested probate matters too, like a big estate? Would that be protested?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, not only am I, as you know, Judge Klager, am I sitting in Judge Klager's office or he in my office every day learning probate, but I'm also going to a probate seminar at the next one they have in a month, and sitting with my probate clerk and going through the probate code, because it is very technical. It's a very technical field of law. There are what are called dependent administration of estates that get contested, and I have more than a few of them.
So you'll be having some of those, and I guess I guess the sort of scenario is like this. I guess sometimes they'll actually be contesting would you contest the validity of a will, and would that be your?
Certainly can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that might be one issue, and then of course I guess what it would be, the interpretation of the will.
Who is the administrator? Certain bequests in the will.
Issues like that. And I guess it's done to a jury. Are there like jury charges? I guess there's like regular probate jury charges to the jury in the same way.
I don't know whether or not. I just have never seen a jury charge on a probate case. You know what? I'm certain it'll come up, and hopefully I can address that with Judge Klager.
Okay. And what are your experiences so far in the courtroom? I think you said you had what you called your first docket call, right?
Right.
Okay. I don't know. It took me a long time to figure out what are they talking about docket. That's your list of cases Is that right?
That's right. That'll be the list of cases that are scheduled for trial the following week.
Okay. And then the attorneys go into this docket call and they say, Judge, I'm ready, I'm not ready, I request a continuance, etc. Correct?
Correct.
And what are your experiences so far? Did it go according to the way you wanted it to? It looked to me like, I happened to be there on your first docket call. It looked like it was a pretty long docket call, right?
About 65, 70 people, I think.
And out of that 65 to 70 people, then, that now there'll be so many that are set for the jury trial, right?
That's right. Out of that group, 35, I think, approximately 30 to 35 people announced ready. So they'll show up on Monday, and we'll see out of them what cases actually resolve, what cases are really ready for trial, what case will actually go on Tuesday.
Okay. Now, before a case goes for trial, let's say that you go up there on Monday or Tuesday, right? And then, do you know anything about the case other than the names on the court case? Do you know anything about the case? I guess you wouldn't unless you've had a pretrial matter. Is that right?
That's right. Right.
You'd heard legendarily before that sometimes it's and I've never had real specific complaints about it. I think it might occur wherein sometimes a prosecutor might speak to a judge outside of the presence. I guess that is improper, correct?
It is.
And it's improper vice versa, too. If a defense attorney maybe speaks to the judge too much about a case, I guess that's improper
absolutely.
Outside of the presence of the prosecutor.
Right.
Okay. So you have maybe 5 cases set for whatever. You have these cases set for a jury trial, and then you start. Let's say voir dire when you're questioning the jurors. Are you going to limit the questioning of the jurors to 15 minutes or something like that?
No, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently, just from my experience in the different counties where I practiced and tried cases. The way it is now, one side will ask general questions, then the other side will ask general questions. Then one side will do specific questions, then the other side, I'm not going to do that. One side has 30 minutes longer if they can continue on if they, but I have a strange feeling it's not going to last more than 30 minutes. That's what I've seen in misdemeanor cases, misdemeanor criminal cases. Civil cases are a whole different animal, but 30 minutes, you can ask general, specific questions all at once, turn it over to the other side, they can do the same. And I'm not going to limit them. If it's 35 minutes and they still have additional questions, they can finish up. It's not a problem.
Okay, so basically you're looking at changing it up a little bit to general and specific at once, correct?
That's right. And the reason for that is, and if you, of course, you've been in jury trials, toward the end, they're asking the same questions of each juror. Can you be fair and impartial? Next juror, can you be fair and impartial? It's a waste of time.
I don't know. I mean, it is and it isn't, because sometimes one asks it, one attorney asks it, and the other, they get a different answer sometimes. So that does occur too, right?
It does, but you're going to be able to, if you do it, and from my experience, if you do it right and use looping, you're going to be able to identify those jurors you need to identify to strike, and the other side can do the same. I've seen the way that I'm suggesting voir dire, and by the way, I'm going to give both attorneys the option. They can do it the other way if they want to. I'm not going to force them to do it this new way, although I'm going to ask people to try it. I think they're going to find out that it saves a bunch of time and you get better results.
Okay, that's interesting. Have you ever seen it done before?
I have. In fact, that's how I learned. And in fact, if you've heard of Robert Hirschhorn, he's the one. He's kind of the famous voir dire expert, so to speak, when it comes to criminal law, and he has a very effective presentation on 30-minute voir dire using looping.
Oh, I see. Well, that's interesting. Again, voir dire is when the questions are being made to the jury by the attorneys at the beginning of the case, and then they're attempting to exclude jurors who are biased or prejudiced,
right,
and or jurors who know any of the parties, and or so we could exclude them either for cause or to exercise a peremptory challenge, correct?
Correct. And
obviously in a county court case, it's how many jurors?
6.
6 jurors. When you were trying cases, did you notice any difference between trying a case with 6 jurors versus 12 jurors in a district court case?
I can tell you trying a case with 6 jurors is a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster than 90-person felony panels, which takes all day.
So it's a lot easier. And then you said you'd wanted to become a judge for a while. Why did you want to become a judge?
Okay. I can tell you, the answer I'm going to tell you is kind of a distilled answer, and then I'll go back for the reasoning behind it. For me personally, it comes down to having a desire for public service and wanting to make change and real change in our community. That's my quick 2-second answer. I can tell you how it came about was during my many times of going out to Beeville and Live Oak and all those places, I was a big fan of books on cassette. And I got into the early founding fathers, and a lot of the biographies and books. Finished one from Benjamin Franklin, and I still remember to this day. I was driving to the Nueces County Courthouse, and I had just finished that book, and I all the incredible things he had done in his life, the amazing things when he came to basically the colonies with nothing, and I'm driving thinking, I haven't done anything for my community. I've got a good practice. I'm working well. I'm supporting myself.
Yeah, I think that's where I might disagree with you. I think that's a pretty big deal.
Well,
having an open, honest, and hardworking business is like you're paying your taxes, you're employing people, you're right. I think that's a pretty big deal.
I agree. I hadn't done anything for my community. I hadn't done anything in regards to public service.
All right.
And let me tell you how I changed it, because I think it's interesting. Basically, from my desire to get into public service, I came to the courthouse and realized there was no attorney lounge. There was no place for attorneys to go before court or to wait for a jury.
Well, that's a little bit. I wonder about that.
Okay, we'll address it.
I wonder about that because I do think that sometimes I think that the attorneys are almost treated with disdain or contempt. Like you say, you don't have anywhere to meet with your clients. You've got this huge facility. You don't have anywhere to meet with your clients. And of course, now it's a little bit better because you got the cell phone.
Right.
Years ago, you didn't even have access to a phone. And you're trying to prepare a relatively complicated big case, with boxes of documents, etc. So yeah, I've always wondered about that, if that was very equitable, really.
Well, and I'll tell you how we do it.
Especially the DA's office. Excuse me for interrupting. The DA's they've got the office right there.
They do,
and you don't have one.
And so that's right. And just God, I don't want to go off on a rabbit trail, but for that,
sorry about that.
No problem. The DA's office, it had back when I was practicing, they have access to the internet, which you wouldn't think of as that big of a deal. But during jury selection, it's a big deal. Now, through the Bar Association, we've established Wi-Fi that anybody can use. It's open. You can go up there. It's under Corpus Christi Bar Association. Open access to Wi-Fi on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors, and we're moving it to the 5th and 6th.
I didn't know that.
We didn't have it.
But I've been using a cell phone, internet access.
And so that was one of the last programs that I did before taking the bench, and it just hadn't been done before.
So you are a member of the Corpus Christi Bar Association?
I'm president-elect now.
Oh, that's great. Could I be one of those people that admit that I've never been? I think I was a member 1 year. See,
now I'm going to jump.
I like being the vagabond attorney. I like being the vagabond and outlaw and the street guy. I don't like, maybe being part of the status quo.
Well,
too
Mark,
much.
there's a lot of good that can be done, and the Bar Association does a lot of good. It does. And
that was good.
That was
good.
That's right. And I can tell you another.
Well, like you won $250, $350, $250, $350 a year, right?
Well, for what?
To be a member.
No, I believe it's at $100.
Oh, well, it's a lot cheap. Well, maybe it seemed that high when I started practicing.
Or maybe it's $200.
When I started practicing, I didn't have any money, so I said, hey,
Even if it's $250, it's still a bargain.
Why is it a bargain? Why is it a bargain?
Okay.
Can you get your little face in that book there, and you're in the big catalog?
Well, that's one thing, although I don't know that that's too much of a benefit. I can tell you some things that the Bar Association has done. Not only do we help put on events such as the mock trial competitions for all the high schools. That's coming up, which is an incredible program. We also put out the bench book, which puts all the rules for the courts. I may be boring the people that are watching this who are not into law, but anyway, there's a lot of things we do with the Bar Association for the legal community.
I guess that's why I'm not a member. It sounds pretty boring. No, the other thing is I must admit this. Like that takes a lot of personal skills, getting along with all these people and saying these things and trying to get things passed in discussion, right?
It takes
it's
a
difficult.
lot. It's very
And patience.
getting
and,
Wi-Fi in the courthouse. I had that idea, and I thought I'll get it done next week. People looked at me like I was crazy. That's not how you do things. It took.
I mean, you
step,
and then
step.
you have committees.
Yeah, you have to go through all the stuff.
And especially when I was younger, and didn't have the patience. Said, "Gee, I just assumed, I couldn't quite handle that." So you think the bar association is pretty worthwhile? Huh?
I think it's very worthwhile. I do.
And you're the president-elect right now. Well, what are you going to do now that you're judge? You're going to have to resign, right?
I checked. The first thing when I went to judges school was whether or not I would have to resign from the bar association. They said no, I would not. So as long as I got the clearance from the judicial ethics committee, that was okay. I did have to resign from any kind of political activities, which is obvious.
What was judges school?
That's a program in Austin where all of the judges who were recently appointed or elected go through a school to give them some basics and fundamentals.
Like do they have? I've seen the notebook that some of the judges have, and they go through the questions on the pleas.
Right.
You get one of those books.
You do the bench book.
And you do. Right, and you have like a checklist. Are you satisfied with your attorney? This and that.
This is the oath you give to the jury when they come in. This is what you say next. Exactly right.
Yeah, so that's like a cheat sheet. That's a pretty
it
good
is
deal.
a cheat sheet. Yeah, it is.
And I know that I don't think you take continuing legal education hours anymore as a judge, right? I think you're exempt or something.
You have legal education hours that are judicial hours. You don't take the normal ones, I guess, that I would as a criminal practitioner. I had 50-something hours I did a year. I think there's 20 required as a judge.
20 hours as a judge. And then I know sometimes you go over to the courthouse. All the judges are at a seminar, so y'all go together, right?
I haven't gone yet, but that's possible.
I mean, that's what it seems like. Do you recall that?
There
are certain that way.
There are certain seminars
that a large percent of the judges go to,
and apparently they have to. Apparently there are hours associated with those seminars that you have to have.
Again, trying to save money, I take most of my continuing legal education online. I don't know about how you did it.
I'm going to the probate seminar, so I'll tell you.
And so you're going to be running for election again, and I guess you were sworn in recently, correct?
I was.
And what is this? I saw that it occurred on the 19th, and was that in the courthouse?
Yeah, I had a very small private swearing in, just the court officers, just so I could get to work, so the court's docket didn't back up. I then had a more of a formal public swearing in that occurred 2 nights ago, Thursday. And that was great. So I wanted my family to be able to come down and have a little bit more ceremony involved than just raising your hand.
Where's your family from?
Plano, Dallas.
Plano, outside the Plano area there.
Mm-hmm.
And so on this campaign, I haven't noticed that there's been a lot of there's been a little bit of negative campaigning in when I think Fred Jimenez was running against Maricela Saldana. There was some negative campaigning, and the reason I'm only feel free to talk about it is Judge Saldana lost recently to someone else. There was a little bit of negative campaigning regarding, I think, Fred Jimenez, stating that the lawyers were kept waiting in the courtroom a lot. That's just what I have. But other than that, I haven't seen and then I don't remember if she responded or not in a negative campaign. But that's one of the few instances I've seen. What do you think of negative campaigning? I
don't think it gets any message to the voters. I think it causes sensationalism, but doesn't move any issues forward. I don't plan to do it.
But you're a Republican. You've been watching all these presidential debates.
I have. Don't think.
Let me ask you this: do you know? I mean, I think you're a lot younger than me. So, but when I was, they didn't have all these presidential debates before, and it's kind of, I don't know what to make of it. Well, what do you think about Newt Gingrich, man? What do you think? You gonna vote for him?
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna pass on any questions relevant to the Republicans that are running. I'm gonna wait to see how it all.
Even though you're a Republican and all, and that's your party, and you don't feel too comfortable, and
I don't know that I'm gonna say that. I can say this: the election process at that level is pretty combative. You have you have people spending millions and millions of dollars trying to make the other person look bad. I really wish they would focus on the issues and focus on the election that would come out instead of on attacking each other.
What do you think the main issues for the courts for this position are? What do you think for the county court of law? What are the main issues, do you think? Do you think it relies upon, experience? I would assume you would think it would be in part experience,
Sure.
which apparently you have a lot.
I think the voters should focus on not only experience but on public service. What a person has done in their past is a pretty good indication of what they're going to do in their future, and what ideas they bring. You could have a candidate come and sit here and talk about, I'm going to streamline docket, or I'm going to do that. Well, we should expect our candidates for office, for judicial office, to do that.
Well, right.
You want a candidate who brings ideas outside the box.
One of the problems, one of the issues that I've had with the Republican platform when they run nationally, small government. I said, well, okay, what does that mean? Are you going to get rid of a state agency? Are you going to a government agency? Are you going to reduce all the budgets by 20%? So as you're stating, when you say I'm going to streamline the docket, unless you have a specific proposal, these vague ambiguities that voters might like to hear, I think it's kind of a cheap shot when you do that, when you run like that.
I think so too.
Do you have any good war stories for us when you were trying criminal cases? Any specific
lots of war
interesting
stories.
stories about like let's say the capital cases that you tried that were what did they deal with? That were non-death sentence cases. What kind of cases did they deal with?
I had, before I took the bench, and one of the reasons why I was happy to take the bench was I was trying a lot of the really heavy-duty, high-level felonies.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to mention them on here. Just some of them are still pending on appeal and whatnot, but they're a who's who in the headlines. It's in the local headlines. I'm not saying the big headlines, but
so you felt obviously there's a lot of stress. There's a lot on the table when you're trying a big deal case, because the guy might be looking at life in prison, or like I say, habitual felony offender, 25 to life, and it's a different. It's pretty stressful. You think
it's very stressful, and a lot of those cases, and I'm sure you've handled them. A lot of the cases where there are victims involved, children involved, those wear on your soul. They just do. They're very difficult cases to handle, and as
I'm sorry.
As you get further down in your practice or get more experience, the judges rely on those experienced attorneys to handle a lot of those more difficult cases. And again, I'm not gonna. We don't need to parse on whether a person is innocent or guilty. I'm just saying overall, those high level, the murders and rapes and assaults and sexual assaults are difficult. They're difficult cases to try. They're difficult cases to research. Difficult cases to handle.
Did you do any of your own appeals? Did you do appeals?
I did a lot of appeals.
Okay, so did you do many oral arguments up there on the 10th floor?
I got one oral argument finally was granted on the 10th floor.
So they're often not granted?
For mine, and because I did a lot of court-appointed cases, and a lot of times I would appeal issues because my client wanted to, or I felt like I needed to at least attempt to do something for them. But not a lot were granted. Oral argument was granted. I actually took the bench before they ruled, so I don't know. Another attorney was appointed. I can't tell you the result. Argued before the Fifth Circuit a couple times, which is very, very interesting.
Beautiful courthouse over there.
Oh, incredible courthouse.
So you're licensed in the Fifth Circuit also?
Yeah, before I took the bench.
That's the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's a federal court, our jurisdiction, I'm sorry.
About 50% of my practice was actually federal, 50% was criminal, state. So I was doing a lot of federal work.
You doing federal appointments primarily?
No, about half appointments and half
retained. So those are mostly drug cases over there, right?
A lot of drug cases.
And a lot at the checkpoint, right? And like the checkpoints, Valfurious, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And how does the federal system generally compare with the state system? How's it different? Would you tell the viewers? Quite a bit different.
It's quite a bit different. There's a sentencing guidelines that are not mandatory, but they're still consulted and used, and actually most of the sentences go according to the federal sentencing guidelines. A first offender with no history who is picked up at the checkpoint with methamphetamine or cocaine in a large amount, by vehicle. Maybe it was hidden in the car and the person was a mule carrying it, could be looking at realistic sentence of 18 to 50 years.
Oh, the sentences are unbelievable, aren't they?
With no parole.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when they're looking at that kind of time. And even then, I don't know that many of them go to trial.
Very, very few. The federal system, when you get arrested and are in the federal system, there's generally a whole lot of evidence against you.
And in the federal system, of course, you have a little bit more limited voir dire or questioning of the jurors, the judge, correct?
That's
as an
right.
attorney?
That's correct. You don't. The judge does the majority of the voir dire, the questioning of the jurors.
They do the majority. Years ago, again, this is kind of a war story too, but Judge Eric Brown used to do a lot of the questioning himself in state court. And I'm not saying it was good or bad or whatever. I thought it was interesting that he asked, so a lot of the questions he asked, I wouldn't ask them, because he'd asked a lot of them himself. So I guess it is within the discretion of a state district court judge to ask those questions also. And obviously a federal district court judge is something else, right? I mean, a United States district court judge, you're appointed for life.
Right.
Wherein you, as a state district court judge, you're going to be up, state county court judge, you're going to be up how often?
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years. And I don't know if that influences, is uppermost in their minds, or when they start campaigning again, or you said your campaign is a year from now, right?
That's right.
The election rather, and you've already started to mount your campaign, right?
Absolutely.
Have you already picked who your the campaign chairman's going to be, etc.?
Yeah, and it's not so formal as that. I have a group of supporters, and we're divvying out tasks and getting signs made and getting signs ready to put up the normal things you have to do to run a campaign.
And you had experience in it before, correct?
Absolutely.
And all this money that you get, I have a little bit of experience, not with judicial campaigns, with district, with some of these local political campaigns and all this. And, I think I hate to say this, and I'm not saying this is going to happen locally here, but man, the money changing hands, boy, as you were stating it almost would seem it should be more limited because of, the amount of money going through somebody's hands. I'm certain somebody unethical could kind of grab hold of some of it.
I think so too. The limits are ideally $2,500 per person, $15,000 per firm maximum. That's still quite a bit of money from an individual person or a firm. It
is, and I guess it could even if it would be unconscious, it could influence your decision. Whatever.
Well, and I can tell you, people have donated to the campaign, and people have asked, not the person that's donated, but other people, well, how does that influence? I can tell you, I make that decision in a case according to the law, and that's just,
I can tell you that as a person who's done substantive civil law, wrongful death cases, etc., at a fairly sophisticated level, that the gossip amongst the civil attorneys is it certain judges, who get money from certain civil lawyers and etc. Or this, many years ago I tried a malpractice case, and the lawyer was well known with the judge. I was very disappointed in the trial. So I really feel that it is a problem, for whatever my opinion's worth, especially in the civil realm more than the criminal.
I think that's true.
Because in the criminal realm, most of the criminal lawyers, I don't think, donate a lot of money. They don't have any money inherent in the case, and obviously the person you're on the opposite side with works for the state, right?
That's right.
And I don't think the DA's office can contribute any money.
No.
The present district attorney is Mark Skirka, correct?
Correct.
And I guess you know Mr. Skirka
pretty
well?
I do know Mark.
And he is over, I guess, the prosecutors in the court system, including the county courts, correct?
Correct.
The rotating, now in your court, you'll have a prosecutor for how long in the county courts? It'll be there a month, a week, 2 weeks?
My experience is that they're generally there about 6 months.
About 6 months?
And then they get moved. There's been a lot of turnover in the DA's office over the past 3-4 years, I think.
Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think it's good that they rotate in the county courts? Because they don't in the district courts per se, do they?
Not so much. I think it's just a matter of a person who gets the experience, and there's an opening that opens up in felonies, and they move them up. I would like for the district attorney assigned to the court to stay there, because you're able to learn what works, and if you have a new person that's just hired, you have to go through that whole training part again. So, but that may be part of the role of a county court judge.
Is there anything important you wanted to tell people? Why should they vote for David Stith at the end of this deal? Because we'll try to have your opponents on too, whether they come on or not.
Well, I can tell you this. I certainly have experience trying. I don't want to say millions of cases. That's obviously a hyperbole, but I've tried a lot of cases, and I'll tell you, I don't know that should really be the benchmark, so to speak. I think you should have a person elected that knows the law, but also has a dedicated history of public service and brings new ideas to the bench. So I'm certainly thinking I'm the best person for that.
One of your new ideas is obviously streamlining the first day the jurors come up to release them. Is that right?
That's right. Ultimately, my jury for the jury assigned to Court 3 is not even going to have to show up that first day at the main cattle call. They'll be able to be assigned right to my court. So you'll take a whole day out.
Did you ever serve as a juror?
Twice.
Actually,
never picked.
Never picked either. And that's maybe where you got your idea, that excessive boredom and sitting in that room
for
and
hours.
Then listening to that.
For hours.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I wanted to thank you for coming on. This has been Judge David Stith, who by the county commissioners was appointed County Court number 3, and he's got an election coming up.
November.
Good luck. May the best person win.
Absolutely.
Judge. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
I went home with the waitress, the way I always do. How was I to know she was with the Russians too? I was gambling in Havana. I took a little risk. Send lawyers, guns, and money. Dad, get me out of this. Ha! I'm the innocent bystander. Somehow I got stuck between the rock and the hard place, and I'm down on my luck. Yes, I'm down on my luck. Well, I'm down on my luck. I'm hiding in Honduras. I'm a desperate man. Send lawyers, guns, and money. This shit has hit the fan. All right, send lawyers, guns, and money. Huh. Send lawyers, guns, and money. Send lawyers, guns, and money.